just like, I bow down to this sweater. It is like, I just want it on my body and then just to like live in it and then die in it and then be buried in it.
How can each of us be a part of this solution?
Hello, and welcome to the Sweater Knitters Tag. My name is Celeste, and I host a show called Yarn to Table, which is about my knitting life. It is the typical, right about an hour-long video podcast where I talk about finished objects, works in progress, knitting plans and goals. And I thought that it would be fun to start another knitting tag video that other knitting YouTubers, podcasters, however you want to refer to yourself, could take part in, because these are really fun to do. It's super fun for me, at least, to see different answers to the same types of questions. And sweaters are my favorite thing to knit right now, and definitely my favorite thing to see other people knit and hear about their processes and see what combinations of patterns and yarns they do and stuff like that. So I really, really, really want to see your videos as well. So I'm going to officially tag a couple people, but you are all really officially tagged. If you're seeing this and you have any kind of knitting content on your channel, you are tagged. I want to see what you do, and please send me the link so that I can watch it. So, Melissa of Skeinanigans, you are tagged. Caitlin of Wool Jewel, you are my sweater knitter inspiration. You got me into sweater knitting with all of the beautiful sweaters that you knit. It wasn't enough to live vicariously through you. I had to become a sweater knitter too. So I definitely am tagging you, and I want to see what you knit. And Jenny of Tiny Paper Foxes, my new internet friend. Hi, I love your sweater knitting so much. Also, definite sweater goals situation. So I'm going to tag you as well. Okay, so if you're tagged, or if you want to do this yourself, all you do is take the questions that I'm going to post in the doobly-doo, answer them, and record your own video. So here we go. The first question is, when did you knit your first adult sweater, and how long had you been knitting at that point? So I think I'm a little unusual in this. I had been knitting for like officially 18 years. I learned to knit when I was 10, and I was about 28. Yeah, I was 28 when I knit an adult sweater for myself for the first time. Now, I had knit baby garments, and I had knit tank tops and sweater vests before, but those were few and far between. They were also all gifts. I don't know why I waited so long, except to say that I've always been more of a process knitter, and sweater knitting is kind of feels like more of a product knitting thing. I think I'm becoming more of a product knitter, especially when it comes to sweaters. But for me, I really did not want to sort of learn things and make mistakes and learn from them on sweaters. I wanted to make mistakes and learn on smaller items that were not going to be as frustrating to mess up on. So I kind of got to a point where I knew that I was going to be successful, and then I knit a sweater. I don't necessarily recommend that way of doing things. I think that I probably waited longer than I needed to, but it worked for me. What type of sweater was your first, and how did it turn out? So my first sweater was the Kodo, which is by Olga Berea Kefelian for Brooklyn Tweed, and I knit it out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, which it was written for. I chose the colorway Sweatshirt, which is a darker gray than the sample, but every other regard I knit it to the sample. How it turned out is fantastic. It is a little bit more oversized than would be preferable or than it was designed for, and this is because for a long time I was knitting size large sweaters because I was knitting based on my bust measurement, and I eventually realized that what I should probably do instead is knit size medium and just be okay with the fact that I'm going to have less ease over the bust area. Primarily I knit sweaters with positive ease, so it really doesn't even make a difference. If I were to be knitting something with negative ease, I might alter it to add some more ease to the bust. But essentially, I knit the wrong size sweaters for a little while, which is not that big of a deal. It just makes them a little oversized. And in the case of the Kodo, it was quite oversized. It was meant to be oversized anyway. It was meant to have 10 inches of positive ease around the bust line. I love it and I do wear it. I don't wear it a ton simply because it is an incredibly warm sweater, but given the fact that it has a drop shoulder, is knit out of worsted weight, and is incredibly oversized, it can be difficult to fit it underneath a coat. Yet it is so warm that it's not that great for a day that isn't pretty cold. So there's a very narrow range of weather where it's the right sweater for that weather, and so that's the only downside to it. But I don't think of it as a mistake at all, and I do still wear it. There are a couple sweaters that I've knit that I have retired because I don't wear them, but the first one is still a success. How many sweaters have you knit? Let me check. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say all garments because there's a fine line between like what's a top and what's a sweater and whatever. So I'm just gonna say garments. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have knit 16 and I have 2 on the needles. And that is over the course of about 2 years. The next question is, how many sweaters are in your Ravelry queue right now? I have a few in here. It's definitely not all the sweaters that I'm dreaming about right now, but I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 in my queue right now. I have the Tanya. I want to make another Tanya. That's actually what I'm wearing right now, but I want to make a linen one. The Maritimo by Caitlin Hunter, the Basalt Tank by Raglan, Puff Sleeve Feminine Cardigan by Stephanie Japel, Wool and Honey by Andrea Mowry, Alieska by Caitlin Hunter, and the Stone Cutter by Michelle Wong. The next question is, how many sweaters quantities are in your stash? So for sweaters quantities, now this is a good portion of the ones that are in my queue as well because I'm trying to knit with the yarn that I purchased for them. So I have the Stone Cutter sweaters quantity, the Alieska kit. I have some for the puff sleeve for the Basalt Tank. The Maritimo I'm actually knitting out of leftover scraps, so I'm not going to count that. But then I have for the Tanya. So I have 5 sweaters quantities in my stash. All of which I purchased with those specific sweaters in mind. I'm personally not a person who buys like a sweater's quantity of yarn and then finds a pattern. I almost always choose a pattern first and then choose the yarn when it comes to sweaters. So there are some exceptions. Like I said, I have scraps that I'm going to make the Maritimo out of. So yeah, there's exceptions to every rule, I suppose. The next question is, who have you knit sweaters for besides yourself, and who else would you like to knit a sweater for? So the only adult sweater that I've knit for someone besides myself is a cardigan for my friend Kelly. I have knit a couple baby sweaters. I would like to knit a sweater for my husband, but I actually don't think I will because I think there's quite a difference between the kind of sweater he wants and the kind of sweater I want to knit. He would like something very, very simple, and a husband size stockinette sweater just doesn't sound like the most fun thing to me. I would really like to knit him something with cables, something more interesting. But if I do that, I'm afraid that it's going to be just kind of an obligation for him to wear and that he's not going to love it. So I think I'm kind of made peace with the fact that I'm maybe just going to knit him a lot of socks, which he does love, and fingerless gloves, which he does love, and scarves and hats and other things like that. I might revisit the idea of it at a later date, but yeah. Cardigan or pullover? I definitely prefer pullovers. I have a ton more pullovers. I need to knit more cardigans because they are quite wearable and they really help you wear things like t-shirts and blouses through the winter because you can layer. But I just really love the look of a pullover, and so I tend to fall in love with more pullovers than cardigans, and then I knit more pullovers than cardigans. Top down or bottom up? I don't have strong feelings on this. I can enjoy either direction, and I think both have benefits. If I have to pick, I would choose bottom up because my preferred way to knit sleeves would be to knit them separately so that you don't have that huge sweater hanging off. And so I really like knitting bottom up and then the sleeves separately and then joining all together. Like a bottom up yoke, I think is a really nice construction in terms of the process. That said, there's the obvious advantage of trying on a top-down sweater, which is especially nice when you are doing some kind of alteration to do with the fit. So Caitlin Hunter primarily designs top-down sweaters when she's doing like a yoked sweater. It tends to be a top-down. The Tanya, which I'm wearing right now, is a bottom-up, but that's a drop sleeve. It's a different situation. Anyway, she does a lot of yoked top-down sweaters, and I really like knitting them top-down because she also tends to like a much looser fit and a much longer body than I prefer. So it's nice when I'm sort of changing it up to knit it from the top down and actually try it on a lot as I'm making choices about when to start the ribbing and when to cast off and when to start the cuffs or whether I want 3/4 length sleeves. I just really like the freedom of kind of deciding on the go. So yeah, if forced, I'm going to say bottom up, but obviously I definitely see the advantages of top down for certain situations. Seamless or seamed? You will notice in that discussion I didn't even mention the idea of knitting the sleeves separately and then seaming them in. I've only done that once. That was on my first sweater, the Kodo. The body was in the round, but the sleeves were seamed. I have nothing against seamed sweaters at all. I'm not freaked out by sewing seams, and I think it's definitely, like, I understand that it's an advantage, especially with anything that you want to look more structured. It just happens that most of the sweaters that I've knit, most of the patterns that I've been drawn to have been more modern designs and so they tend to have a more modern construction, which tends to favor seamless because I think that's quite popular now. So I don't have much experience with seaming at all, but I'm interested. In the round or flat? Definitely prefer in the round. Not because I dislike purling. I don't dislike purling. I just like that you can go when it's in the round. I don't know. Yeah, it's just my go-to. Raglan or yoke? Yoke. That's very easy for me. I like the way a yoke fits. I think it fits my body better than a raglan. And I also like the look of a yoke. Drop shoulder or set-in sleeve? I have never knit a set-in sleeve. Again, not because I'm freaked out by it. I'm actually interested in the challenge, but that kind of traditional, like very structured kind of cardigan with the seams and the set-in sleeves and everything, I like it, it's fine, but I just tend to be drawn more toward a more modern look, like a drop shoulder like you have here. So I prefer a drop shoulder, just like the look of it. The fact that it's easier to knit is just a bonus. Fine gauge or chunky? I definitely prefer fine gauge. Of all the sweaters that I've knit, the majority have been fingering weight. I have also knit some DK that I enjoy. I've knit some worsted, which I enjoy, but I find that the finer gauge ones are more wearable for me. And yeah, I've knit some super bulky. I like the look of them and they're fun, but it can be a little hard on the hands and they're just not as versatile or easy to wear. Drapey or structured? I tend to wear drapier kind of, boxy drop sleeve, sort of modern cut sweaters, generally speaking. I definitely can get down with a structured one, but I would say drapey is more my speed. Plain Jane or detailed? I really like minimal style, so I like sweaters that might be considered a plain Jane sweater. I do like them to have some details in them, but I'm more into something like a Weekender by Andrew Mowry, which has like the detail of the slip stitches down the front, little tiny things like that that set it apart, versus like an all over Fair Isle with like a bunch of colors. Texture or color work? I prefer texture to color work. I prefer the look and also the process of something like a cable to something like stranded for the most part, though I definitely can get down with some stranded color work. Favorite sleeve length? Generally speaking, I would say full length sleeves, but I knit a variety. I like to have a variety in my wardrobe for different seasons and different moods. Favorite neckline? That's hard. I think my favorite neckline is something similar to this, where it's not completely all up around your neck crew, but nothing that's too big either. So like a scoop I like more of a boat. I could get down with a slash neckline. I like things that are a little bit higher. I'm not a big V-neck person, and I like a turtleneck, but I've never actually knit one, so I'd like to do that. The next question is, do you have any sweater disaster stories? I actually don't have anything I would call a sweater disaster. The biggest mistake I ever made with a sweater was with my Ebba. So my Ebba sweater, for one thing, that was the sweater where I realized that I needed to stop knitting the large size and start knitting the medium. But also I somehow managed to have too many stitches on the needles when I got up to the color work and the sleeves, which is, yeah. And I think it was because when I did this waist shaping, I think I increased again too many times. But anyway, I made it work by redrawing the color work chart and just changing my expectation for it to be a fitted sweater to it being a very oversized sweater. And it actually ended up working out tremendously because it turns out I love it as an oversized sweater. It has a very 80s look that I'm like super into because it's a really traditional looking Scandinavian color work with a drop sleeve, but with it being like really oversized with that drop sleeve and that traditional stranded color work, it just looks like something you would wear on a ski vacation in the 80s, and it like makes my heart sing. And it is not at all what I was planning. I was planning a fitted sweater, but it just worked out. So that's the closest to a disaster story. Knock wood. I won't have any disaster stories to report in the future. The next question is, what is your biggest achievement in sweater knitting? I think the Ebba probably is my biggest achievement in sweater knitting. It's some of the most complex color work, and it was also, the sleeves were steeked, so it was my first experience with steeking. So I was proud of myself for being, I also redrew the color work a little bit in order to accommodate the new stitch count that I had. So I had to I had to challenge myself with that one. It took me a while to knit it, and I absolutely love the result, even though, as I said, I made that ridiculous mistake with the stitch count. So that's kind of like been the biggest challenge, I think. I would also say that I'm proud of my two kind of complex-ish lace situations, one being the Tanya that I'm wearing right now, and the other also by Caitlin Hunter, the Zweig. They both have a kind of Japanese style lace situation that works cables with lace techniques and some interesting twisted ribbing, and it's just both of them I was able to get through without any I don't want to say without any mistakes, because I made mistakes, but then I would think back and fix them. So I was able to get through them like without any errors, I guess, that I left in the knitting. And they look quite impressive when I wear them. Well, I haven't finished the Zweig, so I can't speak to that. When I wear the Tanya, people, even though it's with this hand-dyed yarn, which I think makes it look quite homemade, people are always completely shocked when they learn that I knit it, because, and I think that's because of how complex the lace looks. And it took some concentration. So yeah, I would say I'm pretty proud of those as well. The next question is, who are your favorite sweater designers? This is very easy for me to answer. Caitlin Hunter and Nora Gahn. So I have knit a ton of Caitlin Hunter sweaters, and I still have Caitlin Hunter sweaters that I would like to knit, and I probably will continue to want to knit her sweaters as she continues to design them, because her aesthetic and my aesthetic are just really in lockstep. Nora Gahn is a cable queen from the Planet Fashion, and I worship her designs. Now, I have not knit one of her sweaters yet. I have knit a hat by her. I'm a little intimidated by her sweaters, but I fully plan to knit them. In fact, it's a goal of mine to knit at least one of them this year. But I would still call her one of my favorite sweater designers, because I have a ton of her designs in my favorites list and in my upcoming plans for sweaters that I will one day knit. She has just a way of combining like really interesting complex cables with original shapes that are really, really stylish and modern, which is a great combination, because a lot of times I think as knitters we can be forced to choose between either designs that are challenging or designs that look very contemporary and fashiony. But Nora Gahn and Caitlin Hunter both actually, I think, exist in that realm where they design things that are challenging enough for the advanced knitter while still being fashionable enough for someone who wants to wear clothes that are a bit more contemporary in terms of the cut and the shape and the design features like drop sleeves and stuff like that. The next question is, what sweater would you like to knit next? So very next in line, I am planning to cast on the Stonecutter by Michelle Wong, which is a very complex, beautiful cabled pullover that I have been dying to knit for a very long time. So that is my plan. I also am fantasizing about, though I have not bought the yarn for, but I think it has to be somewhere near in my future, the new Caitlin Hunter from the latest Pom Pom, which was edited by her loveliness, Nora Gahn. It is called the Willow Wood, and it is like just like, I bow down to this sweater. It is like, I just want it on my body and then just to like live in it and then die in it and then be buried in it. The next question is, what is your biggest sweater ambition? So this is basically, what is like a sweater that you, either a specific pattern or a type of sweater that you dream of knitting one day, but it's not right around the corner. So when I think about long-term goals, something in sweater knitting, that would be a major challenge that I definitely would like to do, but I don't see it happening like in the next year or so. I always go straight to an all-over Fair Isle sweater. I love the look of traditional Fair Isle sweaters. And when I say Fair Isle, I'm not using it interchangeably with stranded. I mean the traditional Fair Isle designs, which is to say changing up your color that's in your background and your color that's in your foreground pretty quickly, and having those traditional rows of designs. I love the look of these, and I am really inspired by the challenge of working with a lot of colors, because that can be difficult for me. I would like the challenge of figuring out a palette that all works together but reads as not too busy or too bright, that would still fit into my wardrobe. And I feel like doing stranded color work and also changing both your foreground and your background color frequently would make it such a total blast to knit. I think it would be a challenge and also a joy. The next question is, have you ever designed your own sweater, and would you? I have not yet, but I would love to do that. I definitely have lots of ideas. Again, it's one of those like long-term goal, back burner things for sure. What is your favorite yarn for knitting sweaters? I definitely prefer non-superwash, especially for sweaters. And my favorite yarn right now is anything Brooklyn tweed. So I love Shelter. I still haven't tried Loft, which is crazy, but I need to, because obviously I love fingering weight sweaters. So I have to try that. And I'm a fan of Arbor as well, which is their DK weight. Is there a color you tend to gravitate toward for sweater knitting? I definitely think that my palette is slightly different for sweaters than for other things. I have only knit one pink sweater, for example, even though I love pink, because it's just not one of my favorite colors to wear. I gravitate more toward the sort of gray and neutral palette for sure. And when it comes to colors, I've actually noticed myself choosing red a lot, and dark green, sort of the green that will bring out my eyes as well. The next question is, what is your most worn hand knit sweater? Probably my Tenya, which I'm wearing right now, but I also wear the Kirigami a lot, and the Tecumseh a lot as well. And it's funny because those are a long sleeve, a 3/4 length sleeve, and a short sleeve sweater. So it shows how having that range in sleeve length, I think, really helps in terms of different seasons. So the final question is, other than sweaters, what is your favorite thing to knit? And for me, I will probably say socks. All right, that is the sweater knitter tag. I hope you enjoyed hearing my answers, and that you will enjoy answering the questions yourself. Remember, let me know if you do, because I would love to check it out, and give me a shout out when you do.